The human brain processes images 60,000 times faster than it does text. And it is more accustomed to processing images because we are visual people, right? You and I see and understand the world around us. An infographic is a visual representation of a story. You have something to tell your audience. Infographics provides you the way of presenting that information more effectively. Well, what and why are we talking about an infographic? An infographic can be a combination of imagery, graphical data, and text. And its purpose is to make data easily and often enjoyably understood at a single glance or with a brief amount of attention. We're talking about infographics because that is the next step in your designing journey. If you have started designing already, you need to make sure that infographics and content communication are one of your key pillars of learning and creating content. Infographic is a simple representation of information or content. And a designer, a good designer, knows that providing a simple solution to a complex design problem is always a challenging job. So why not do it? Look at this chart. This chart explains a good infographic. Is your infographic actually an infographic? So what it says basically over here is that you need to have a good amount of visual components and your infographic should have main attention or main content being explained through these graphics themselves. If you remove the graphics, you can still provide information, but it will probably be just text. You don't want text, you want graphics to provide that information, and that is what a good infographic is. So how can you make a good infographic? Well, if you have started already, check for these errors in your design. We're going to be talking about 4 or 5 different points, and if not, you are in luck. Get your pen and paper and let's understand the few best practices and tips you can follow for design. Here's a word of caution though. I'm not going to be creating an infographic with you, at least not over here. We have an entire course designed for it. So you'll need to check that out. But in the meantime, in this video, let's talk about a few good or bad points about certain infographics. So let's get started. Number 1, create a story. You need to understand the problem and then present its solution. Your infographic is an interesting read for the audience. Make it meaningful. Do not just put information in form of images. What you need to do is create a good design. Look at this infographic. You can see that this is probably good at design, but it does not flow through a single story. If you're talking about a story that is specifically, this might make a great poster on a student's wall, but this is not really flowing through and will not capture users' attention at any point in time. You can keep on jumping between different points and you'll still gain all of that information, but you'll not retain that. Whereas you look at the other one. This is a much better example. Here I know that the content starts from the top and then it flows through as a passenger journey through the airport as well. So this is a better example of how a story can be displayed in a simple infographic. If your infographic is not presenting a good story, it will make no meaning for the audience. What you need to do is present an idea which is integrated by connecting all the dots of the story. Point number 2, make it simple. It is much easier to make an infographic a complex piece of information. Just dump it all there. However, with reasonable time and effort, you can make a simple and understandable infographic that your audience will love. Look at this. This just gives me PTSD. There is so much information over here that I do not know where to start off from. More importantly, it starts from the top right instead of the top left, as I'm probably already used to. Well then, there is so much information over here, and that is why it's probably a better idea to simplify all of this information and present a single facet of what you're trying to explain, or at least break it down into smaller segments like what we had seen over here, because this makes it easier to understand and grasp. You can use text to support images and bullets when you're describing something, whereas use numbering steps when you're explaining a particular process. Use images for each bullet or a specific step. That will make your infographic more memorable. If you're displaying data in charts, something like this, pick a chart type that explains or displays information, which is an effective way of communicating. What I can see over here in this image, are two different variations of showcasing information. The first one is slightly difficult to understand because the text is difficult to read. I'm not sure where to start off from, and there is a lot of content which is just pulling my attention. Whereas the second one is slightly more clear and it requires way lesser attention from me to grasp and start understanding the content itself. You can keep your infographics simple, as if a reader requires to spend several minutes to grab the presented idea. He may already have left your infographic, right? So you'd want to keep it as simple and as quick as possible. Number 3, use right data visualization. Data visualization is used to present data in a graphical format so that it becomes easier for the reader to understand it. Now, it is a challenge to present data using the correct visualization form. If you just put data in any kind of visualization, it can confuse the reader even more. Look at this graph. Now, this chart, I'm not sure what it represents. There are 4 different months which are written, there are multiple colors, but it's hard for me to grasp the exact content from over here. Similarly, now this chart is somewhat better. I can see that there are different stock markets across different countries, and all of these countries have a different number. Although I'm slightly confused with the colors over here, green, the yellow, the pink, the blue and the cyan, but it's still better represented in the form of the visualization that could be used. If you just put data in any kind of visualization, it can confuse the reader even more. First, make sure that you have collected real data and there is no error in it. That is an extremely important point. You don't want to be representing misinformation. Second, based on your data, decide on the visualization form. Whether it's a chart, a graph, you can present it as an infographic so that it can make sense to a reader. Now, look at this chart. The big cheese. It talks about who are the different CEOs across the different times. But why is a pie chart used to explain the amount of time? It should probably be used for sectors and the amount of weightage a particular person has had. But this represents almost some sort of misinformation. This chart, however, the timeline of Flex's life, is way better in explaining chronology. And that is what I'm talking about. This is definitely not a standard chart. You probably have not seen this, but it's far more easier to understand. It's basically, if I was to rephrase it, it's basically just a simple line that tells the different timelines across the Flex's life and the major points in Flex's life. Now, this is the kind of information that you need to think of before you get started. Number 4, avoid any text clutter. The best infographics display a good balance of textual and graphic content. Now, this one image over here, one has text but no graphic to support it. In the other one, there is graphic but there is no explanation. What do I make of those pencils? Infographic is more like a visual representation of information. I really love this one. You can see how there is a story, there is a clear thought, and the text is used only to support the visuals and not the major thing. Do not use unnecessary explanation of graphics unless extremely required. Of course, that's what is unnecessary. And use correct fonts and colors to make the infographic appealing for the reader. Using different shades of pink and green, although the infographic designer has probably used a lot of colors, but it all comes together when there is continuity of thought and there is an anchoring of information. That is important, and that is you representing your visual information as cleanly as possible. And that brings me to the next one. Number 5. Choose the right color scheme. It is very important to use colors effectively in infographics. Using too many colors may confuse the reader, whereas using lesser number of colors can make it boring piece of information. This is a good infographic but has very monotonous feel. It gets boring to understand what's happening over here. The previous one I still like more because even though there are more colors, but there is a representation for all of those colors and very specific hues. It gives me a nice understanding feel even though it's for a very grave topic. What you can do is use a simple color palette of not more than 4 colors for your infographic, unless it contains some specific information like logos of companies, right? And you can use colors to highlight information just like over here wherever necessary. Make sure to use good contrast to display different types of information as well. Font color is also an important aspect that can make or break your infographic. What you need to do is decide a font color based on the background color that is being used. Well, these were everything that I could talk to you about looking at few infographics that I've come across in the past couple of days. Designing data visualizations and infographics is not an exact science, designer or not. Creating infographics takes time and practice. There will be hits and quite a few misses. The next time when you're designing an infographic, be sure to avoid these common mistakes, and you're likely to create meaningful and engaging infographics. When you create an infographic, strive for clarity and accessibility rather than absolute perfection. Iterate the graphics that you generate in order to discover how to better present your content in a way that is easily understood by your intended audience. Much unlike this sentence that I just spoke. Of course, this will take time and practice, as I said, and you need to do it over and over again to get perfect at it. And if you need more help in designing better, follow this particular channel where I am going to be taking you to get aligned with design. Make sure that you like this video, share with somebody you think needs it, and subscribe to the channel for yourself. And if not, hit that bell icon so that next time when I do create a video, you can get a notification. I'll see you in another one.